so that I can play it for Emma later. So I did a lot of updates this afternoon, and I have some things I want to talk to you guys about as well, about what you want to do with the second half of this class and give you some options that way. But remember that this Sunday, we're meeting at the NGA at 11. Those that can make it. And I know that I can't, it's not a penalized thing if you can't. But for those of you who can't make it, just send me an email saying I can't make it. That way I'll remember not to wait for you, okay? Because my mind is like a sieve. And I know that Alec can't, but do send me an email reminder as well. By the Mercury, under the dome, right? And Emma and Monica are supposed to do their resident expert talks, right? I've invited the undergrads as well, just so that it mimics the experience of the people who went in Amsterdam as much as possible. So that's Sunday at 11, okay? Excuse me. I've updated the Tiny Desk exhibition assignment. I want to go over that next. That's the next step of this. This shouldn't be all that difficult, I think, really, because some of you have probably already been thinking this way. So what I want you to do is to plan a sort of a thematic exhibition of 4 works, combining your resident expert work from whichever museum it was. Okay, is that okay? Is that too small? Not that bigger? Good? Okay. If I can see it, I figure you probably can too. With 3 other works, if you want to do 4, that's fine, from Dutch museums and the NGA, and I want you to choose those in consultation with me. What you'll write, it will be a catalog essay on a theme that you choose that plays out across those different works. Part of the issue is to get into this question that we raised sort of with Jan Steen a little bit, which is the degree to which other works of art that are similar to what we're working on can help to nuance our meaning, right? Can help us understand what we're doing by looking at what are the conventions, right, of a particular theme, and then how does that then play out in your work? Does it vary from the convention? Does it follow the convention? Are there other ways that we might look at a particular theme or idea relative to your work? So we'll sit down and talk about that and choose those. You'll write a catalog essay and design an NGA-style exhibition flyer, which you'll present to the class as you sort of talk about your theme during test week. Right, a very informal presentation. We'll also, during test week, I'll make bitterballen, I think, for everybody, and there'll be no shellfish in them, so for that. I doubt I'll have oysters, right? They won't be as good here anyway, they never are. Okay, so what we'll do is we'll go over the 3 steps of the project, as well as the overview today. So each one of these, again, links to a PDF, except for the last one, which links to a Word doc, because it's laid out funky, and I want you to be able to have access to the text in that. So the overview is basically what's on this page. I don't really have to open that up because it's exactly the same as what's on this page. But if you want a one-page PDF, you can download it there. So under the first step, which is due a week from Friday, is to sit down and talk to me. That needs to be bigger, right? Sit down and talk to me about your painting and where you might go from there, and I can help you to sort of think about other works of art you might choose. So, for example, I could see John choosing it would not necessarily have to be by Jan Steen, other images of beggars in art, for example, if that's the direction you wanted to go, or other images of wealthy Dutch burghers that are in some sort of activity, right? Those are possibilities of ways that one could go with that. Or Megan might want other images of the Maria Kerk that would help to amplify that one, and they might not necessarily be paintings. They might be prints, for example. Or it could be other works by Sanradam from that period where he's reworking drawings later from that one period that he's in Utrecht, right? I could think of others, right? Candles and images might be the way you go, or other images of William, right? I mean, that's up to you to sort of choose which way you want to go with that. So now that you've seen your picture live in the museum, reflect on what interests you most about it. This a range of things. I threw some things in here as possibilities. This is not meant to put boundaries around it, but rather to open it up. So artist's inclusion of a particular detail, the choice of subject matter, connections to historical events, painting style, nothing's off limits. It's whatever interests you most.
So it doesn't have to be linked to our paper.
It does have to be to your painting, something about your
Our
painting.
but it doesn't have to be the theme of
Bingo.
the paper.
But that doesn't mean it can't be part of your paper.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes, but it doesn't
Nothing
have
is
to.
off limits.
Okay.
Okay? Yep, it can be from your paper. It doesn't have to be from your paper, right? It can be, it doesn't have to be. Okay? What interests you most about the picture now? Okay? What you'd like you to do is make an appointment to talk to me about it. So, shoot me an email. Mondays and Thursdays for me are difficult to be here after 5 because I get here at 6:30 in the morning, especially Thursday because I'm here till 9, right? And then get back here in the morning at 6:30. So those late afternoons are really difficult. But Tuesday, Friday, I have a class till 5 o'clock anyway. So those work out really well. I'm also here during the day if you want to come during the day, right? Just make an appointment to meet with me sometime before a week from Friday. Right? And we'll sit down and talk about your picture, what interests you, and I can start to get you thinking about, okay, here are some pictures you might want to look into, right? Insofar as I know, but at least now I got it on my radar screen, I can help you to begin to devise it as well, right? So there might be something I don't know right now, but I'll remember, or I'll go home and I'll go, oh yeah, there's that one, right? Or I'll be reading an article and I'll see that. So making a half-hour appointment, this is not graded, just to get you started, right? To begin to think about what works of art might be paired with your resident expert work, depending on what you're interested in. Right, is that pretty straightforward? Any questions on that? It's a week from Friday, okay? We need to get moving because we have time to do revisions on one of the essays, and if we don't get moving fast, it's going to fly right by, okay? So that's the planning of the exhibition. The second step is around an 8-page paper that discusses your theme, written in the manner of a catalog essay from an exhibition. We've read some of these already, right? It just is an essay that dives into that theme, right? The drafts are due on a Friday because we don't, they're by email, and that will give me the weekend to grade it, right? And get it back, grade it, but, assess it, comment on it, get it back to you. So after you've determined what other works you might be looking into, you begin to research those to provide a broader context for your work. You can also do research into other sources that you think would be relevant to the theme you've chosen. So you might want to look into emblem books, for example. You might want to look into, love poems that mention fire, if that were where you're going with that, right? The senior side of that. Or pastoral poems, or erotic pastoral poetry might be something for yours. Pastoral, mythological landscape images, right? Hey, Monica. We're going over the assignment, so pull up a chair. So after you've registered your topic with me and talked to me about it and talked about which other works, you're going to start researching those works as well, right? And this would give you a broader context for what we're seeing in your work. From your research, you'll write an 8-page, sorry about the typo, exhibition catalog style essay that it discusses your theme within the context of 17th century Dutch art. So don't be looking at, I'm just going to pick on you because you're close, right? Images of torches in ancient Roman art, unless you find something that really suggests that Skullduggery was into that sort of stuff. You're really going to be looking at how this really, or you wouldn't want Monet, right, or something like that, because it really wouldn't be that relevant to helping us understand our work that much, right? So within the context of 17th century Dutch art and how it plays out across the works you've chosen, and how those other works nuance the meaning of your work. Right? The idea is that the broader context that you'll be looking into at this point will help to then sort of affect your ideas about that particular aspect that you've chosen of your work, right? The rest of it is sort of similar to what you saw in the first essay, right? Don't attempt to convey everything you've learned during the course of your research. Strive to maintain focus, treating your theme across the different works of art thoroughly, thoughtfully. Think about writing your writing is a process of thinking, not a record of what you read. Be sure to work the paper through drafts before giving me the draft. Make sure you articulate it as clearly, fully, thoughtfully considered, edit it for flow and organization, plus the simple stuff, right? Grammar, syntax, spelling. So like the first paper, the draft can be shorter than the full length, because the idea of revision is not just spell checking, but also elaborating on ideas. So since the final paper I want to be around 8 pages, the draft around 6. Okay? But it shouldn't think of it as a rough draft, right? You should think of it as really a fairly complete work, right? And not like and I don't have to tell you guys this, but the undergrads give me these things. It's like 3 pages, and Professor Trowbridge, I'll be finishing up the rest of this. It's like, okay. The revision then is due about a week and a half before class is over, and the reason for that is you'll have time to do the third step. Right, I wanted to leave you sufficient time to do that. So, a full revision of the draft, considering the editorial comments, buffing it up to 8 pages. Okay? So that's the second part of the Tiny Desk exhibition project, is the catalog essay. Right? Now, again, with your research, you'll read other catalog essays. It's the thematic essay related to your work. That's what catalog essays often are. Right? Thematic essays related to the work. Okay. Any questions on that? Yeah.
I guess what I'm wondering is, like, if I've already sort of written at length about, like, candlelight in my first paper, how do I not?
Is that, well, maybe that's not what it is. That what interests you most about it?
Well, that's really the whole thing.
Well, yes and no, right? I mean, the other issue is sort of the idea you could conceivably get into the whole question of presentation pieces, right? And talk about portraits as presentation pieces and find out if other people have done something like that. Leaders dressed in armor rather than in aristocratic clothes. Clothing within portraits might be something interesting as well. The other option is that with fire, there might be other works that we can get you to look into with that, beyond what you've already looked at, right? So the idea would be to push yourself further than what you did the first time around. So it doesn't mean that candlelight or the torchlight is off limits entirely, but it does mean that maybe there's a chance to begin looking at this more fully, right, in other directions. That's the whole point of having the sit-down talk, is to say where you are with that, right? So yeah, Megan in her paper might also have said, okay, I've already looked at all of the pictures from Utrecht, and I really discussed the ones I wanted to discuss. What can I do now if I want to continue looking into that? And that's why we'll have a conversation. Okay? But that's a question I anticipated from, not from you, but just in general from someone. So that's a good question. Okay? Other questions on this step? And Monica, I'm recording this, so the 5 minutes that you missed, you can play back as well. Okay? The third step is an exhibition brochure. So National Gallery is always making exhibition brochures. And you imagine you're having this little fake exhibition that you're making, so have a brochure, right? And what I did was I formatted this to the size of a standard brochure, right? It's a Word document, so you can just plug your stuff in here, right? Sorry about that, there's a typo. It should say part 3, not 6. Right, so I'm going to make this a bit bigger so we can see it a little bit better. There, okay. So what you'll do is you'll pare your catalog essay down. You'll distill it into an illustrated NGA-style flyer to present to the rest of the class. So during finals week, what we'll do is you'll get up and you'll talk about what you did to the rest of the class. You'll probably have a PowerPoint with it, but you have a little flyer for your exhibition, right? Now, you could, if you wanted to, go through and try and lay out a trifold this way, or something like that. But if you just print this up, then you can just staple it along the left edge, right? If you plug your stuff into this, right? And that's pretty straightforward. Should work out really well. So a broad overview of the theme of your Tiny Desk exhibition. Introductory discussion of each work in your show, right? There are links to NGA's flyers on the last page of this handout, so you can plug those in. I haven't checked the links since I last sort of did something like this, so I'm hoping that they still work. And if they don't, let me know and I'll find more. Okay? You will be using your previous scholarly research for the content of the brochure, but you don't have to include footnotes or footnotos either, right? Foot and toes. Ha! That's great. With a typo, footnotes becomes foot and toes. Write a solid introduction that presents the theme that the works in your exhibition will highlight. So you should think about it having about 750 words of text, 3 pages on standard paper, right? Double space and all. Images cited in the text and captioned like your other essays. And a checklist at the end with the artist, title, date, city, and collection for each of the works. Okay? Now what I would recommend doing is composing it just in your standard Word document before you try to lay it out. Right? But once you've composed your text, try to do a bit of desktop publishing. Your grade will not be based on your skill in desktop publishing. But I want you to give it a shot anyway, right? So if that is an utter, total, epic fail, the desktop publishing part, it doesn't mean you would go from an A to an F. But I do want you to at least give it a shot, right? If I can do it, you can do it.
You're looking my
And I'm happy to help, right? So use these instructions as a template, replacing my text and picture. You can see it's only 6 inches wide, right? So this is like 6 by 8 or something, or 6 by 9, which is a nice size for those. Use these instructions as a template, replace my text and pictures with your own. Many of these I've used tables to help with the layout, which I find really helps a lot when you're trying to do desktop publishing. Choose a font smaller than 12 point for paper this size, because 12 point just takes up too much room. And on a brochure, you simply don't need it that large. Your text and the embedded images, like Figure 1, should fill around 4 pages of this size. And that way, if it were a 6-page flyer, cover sheet, 4 pages of text, and your checklist on the end, right? The checklist of the works that are in your show should be on its own page at the end, right? So 4 full pages, 6 by 9 ought to be about right, right? Single space with the cover, another at the end for your checklists. Total of 6. If you use this matrix and print it 2 sides, trim it, you can staple it along the left border. It should come out pretty good, right? And play with it and see. I see Vincent's already got his printed out, right? So you do just trim it down, and once you print yours in there, right? Chop it on down and print it up. And I want you to print one up for, there's only 6 of you in the class, right? So print up 7 or 6 because you're going to give one to me, right? And bring those in with you so you have a little flyer, right?
Black and white.
Black and white's fine. Yeah, don't waste money on color. If you want to waste money on color, go for it. But I'm not going to make you spend extra $1.50 a sheet or whatever it is for color printing, right? But make sure that each of your images is labeled like these ones are here, okay? Okay? Give you the rest of it's kind of hubbub. Give your picture some breathing room within your text. I use two line breaks for some breathing room from the text to the image, right? As you're just little tips about laying things out. Also, how to handle things if you're going to use a detail of something. So this lovely ice scene by Adam Van Brain has a guy peeing in the corner, so I put him in there, right? Perfectly acceptable to put each caption below the image. You can read all this through, right? They're basically going to be laying out a little flyer, right? And again, John, don't worry about it. If it comes in as a Word document, 3 pages of 8.5 by 11, that's not going to be the end of the world. And I'm happy to help you try to lay it out. Okay? Okay. So that's the long and the short of all of that, right? This all kind of lays it all out. I put root images in it, right? Cows doing cow things. And here are some brochures that I found online, going back through the teens, right? And there may be more. I may update that. If you find some of the links are broken, let me know so I can pull them off of here and replace them with something else. So those are the 3 steps, right? You're going to talk to me before next Friday about a theme related to your picture that can be something you've already written about or not, right? You'll get started doing the research. We'll talk about other works that might go with that you haven't already talked about, right? You may also include some things that you have talked about with this and revise it around that specific theme. Then you'll be writing this catalog essay, and then you'll be taking the information from the catalog essay and turning it into a little brochure for tourists, right, for visitors. Is that clear enough? Okay. The due dates are here on Canvas, but they're not on the syllabus, right? So the syllabus schedule doesn't have the due dates for these because I didn't have my act fully together for that. Okay? So make sure you turn to Canvas for all of the due dates. They're all here. Okay? And the brochure is not due until our meeting during finals week, right? At which point we'll just have a sort of end of the term. You guys will talk about what you worked on, show us pictures about your images, and we'll have some food. Right? Sorry? 8th of May. We're on the... Most of your night classes always have the final on the same night as the class meets. I don't know if it's supposed to be at 6:30 or at 7, though. Right? Double check the syllabus. It says what that is.
Should we contribute with other food dishes?
We'll talk about that more when we get there, but yeah, that would help my pocketbook, right? If I wasn't the only one bringing things. Okay, so you have 2 due dates coming up, right? One is Sunday the 24th, right? You're going to give your resident expert thing down at the NGA. So we're meeting under the dome by the fountain with Mercury on it at 11, and we'll go see your pictures. I've invited some of the undergrads, Monica. So I don't know if they'll show or not, but they're invited, and I think some of them might want to come and hear it. And you and Emma will be doing your resident expert talks, and then we'll walk around and look at the collection a little bit, I think, while we're there, right? Take advantage of being down there, because it seems to be very difficult to get us down there. And then, so that's Sunday the 24th, that's this Sunday. A week from Friday is the deadline to meet with me to talk about your next path. Okay? Any questions so far? Okay. Now, the next thing to ask about is what to do next, right? We have 2 different options. One is that we can continue the way we kind of have, go back over some of the material, look at some other required readings, or give you some other readings that would sort of cut across things in a different way, right? Probably fewer. We would never come in with like 5 of them or anything like that, right? But that's one possibility, and I've got some things sort of lined up that would work well. Some more readings in particular. I might just like hit the heavy hitters, like some readings on Rembrandt, some readings on Vermeer, some readings on Frans Hals, right? And maybe some other readings on landscape painting, because there's a lot out there on how to interpret landscape painting. So that might be one direction to go. At the same time, I want you to have the ability to sort of work through this project without having other things coming from me that you're juggling as you're working, because it is a shortened schedule. So the other option is I'll just come in and we'll discuss works of art that I've put together that sort of go back through the material that we've talked about, but look at works of art that are in the National Gallery and try to provide broader context for these things. Or we can do both. But I want it to be, what do you guys want to do? Do you want me to come in front-loaded with the sort of things that are like, not necessarily lectures, but sort of images that we can then talk about that would provide sort of a broader context for, because many of you haven't had art history before, so, we didn't really look at what was Rembrandt all about, right? And just sit there and look at that and dive into it. What else is going on with the history of landscape painting, right? And I'm happy to do that as well. In fact, that's kind of easier for me in the long run than preparing a discussion around a required reading. So I don't care. Whichever one sounds good to you, I'm good with. Do you have a preference?
I like the first option.
More required readings?
No, is that the
The second option.
The other first option.
The other first option. You like the passive ALEC option rather than the active ALEC
It's not
option.
passive, because don't we still have to like present, don't we still have like in-class presentations?
It would mostly be in class discussions. I would be presenting things, and the idea would be that the slides that I come in with would be the basis for our discussion, but there wouldn't be something that you would have to have prepped ahead of time, right? Because that way you can then focus your energies not only on the works you're doing for my class, but I imagine many of you are in more than one class, right? Is that true, or is this the only class you have? This is the only class you have?
No, more work.
Right.
I have Dr. Howell.
Yeah. So, well, she's going to kick your ass. So, so when you were saying the other option, that would be where I'll show things on the screen, we'll talk about in broader context, and we'll have a discussion about these things. That way, rather than basing it around particular required readings. How do other people feel about that?
I agree with Al.
You agree with Alec? Okay, great. That's fine. That's really is so much easier for me in a way, because it's much easier to throw these lectures together than it is to sort of mine a required reading. Now, we might have one or two that might be worth. There's a really great reading that I think methodologically is worth looking into on. A guy did a really thorough job researching Vermeer's patrons. And it's like one of these sort of these articles that changed, it came out in the 90s, but changed the way we think about stuff. And really, I think it's kind of an interesting thing to think about. I haven't really talked a lot about, only here and there about patronage. So I might have one here or there, right? But everybody that's done presentations based on the required readings can count on an A for that part of the class. Okay, even if you only did 1 versus 2. All right? That's also good news, isn't it? Yeah? Okay, so that's what we'll do then. And that makes, really, that, like I said, also the thing is for me, I think I learn as much from doing that as I do from the required readings, because I get the chance to go back and look at these things again, which I think is great. Okay? So that's what we'll do. I'm happy to talk about particular things if you guys want to. So what I did for today was I put everything together for Rembrandt. Just go through what Rembrandt was all about, right? And look at pictures not only from, let's see if this is going to do it or not. Let me just check that. Okay. I'm going to do this and double check this and see what it, okay, that's not doing it. So I'm going to stop